As far as the Cedar Grove Cemetery is concerned, it goes back to 2010 with me and a group of guys from what we call the office. Well, actually, it's about 2015 that about 8 or 9 of us older guys, and when I say older guys, then well above 60 years old, sitting around in our little public man cave at the Bojangles on West Trade that we call the office, and started talking about the Cedar Grove Cemetery, which a couple of us had stumbled across and found it to be quite overgrown. I mean, when I say overgrown, there were full-blown trees, not little saplings, but full-grown trees in that cemetery. There were weeds and all kinds of stuff. And we concluded that we should take it upon ourselves to go in there and clear it out.
Welcome to Lost Soldiers, a production of Wreaths Across America Radio, brought to you by SaveCedarGrove.org and HistorySouth.org. Here are your hosts, Shay Malik Abdullah and Dr. Tom Hanchett.
Welcome to Lost Soldiers. My name is Shay Abdullah, your host, along with
Tom Hanchett.
Dr. Tom Hanchett.
I've been practicing that, and I was a beat behind. There you go.
It's the debonair. Dr. Tom Hanchett is with us today, local Charlotte historian, author of a brand new book that's out on shelves today. The title of your book, Tom?
Affordable housing in Charlotte, what one city's history tells us about America's pressing problem.
And you can also find more historical information from Dr. Tom Hanchett at HistorySouth.org. Welcome to the program, Lost Soldiers, where we dive deep into the lives and times of the soldiers we have located at the Cedar Grove Cemetery here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Starting out in this endeavor, we located 6 veterans that had served our country and found them abandoned in the Cedar Grove Cemetery, like I said, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Cemetery abandoned around 1973. Continued cleanup efforts are discovering more and more information about our veterans that are there. And as I mentioned, we started with 6, 2.5, 3 years later, we're up to 49 veterans that we've discovered.
In Cedar Grove.
In Cedar Grove Cemetery.
My goodness.
That's it. And there he is, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest today, Mr. Golden Bull himself, as we shoot live today from the Johnson C. Smith University podcast studio. Mr. Ken Koontz, welcome to the podcast.
That's Bishop
Ken Koontz, welcome to the podcast. You've been promoted.
Well, that's an
in the
inside.
eyes of the Lord.
Let me. I just took my crazy pill before I came in, so it hasn't kicked in yet. But let me explain the bishop. The Tuesday morning forum that I attend weekly, along with you, Shay, and the chaplain for that organization had been down under the weather for several weeks, so they asked me to pray one Tuesday morning, and I did. Always, willing and ready to pray. So I did, and they seemed to like that prayer, and the next week they asked me again. And this went on for about 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden I said, y'all, what's going on here? Y'all making me the new anointed and appointed chaplain? I don't want that. They say, "Oh, Ken, come on, we like your prayer." Okay, all right. So they call me. So now it's been I guess we've been into it about 2 or 3 months now.
Yeah.
And so I have definitely, like many of them, I have anointed and appointed myself Bishop Ken Koontz.
Well, welcome, Bishop Koontz. The Tuesday Forum is a regular occurrence here in Charlotte as well. Every Tuesday morning, you can find the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum on the web. See the Bishop live and in action. Tom, let's jump in and talk a little bit about Cedar Grove.
Let me give some background, because we're on Wreaths Across America Radio, and there are people here who are not from Charlotte. Welcome, y'all. Glad to have you here. Just set the stage a little bit. Cedar Grove Cemetery is on the west side of Charlotte, which for most of the time we've been alive has been the largely black part of Charlotte. It actually has an even more surprising history if you go back far enough. But along Beatty's Ford Road, which is the main corridor here, if you turn off on Hildebrand Street, you come to what was an overgrown bit of forest when Shay started teaching at the little school there. And he realized that it was a cemetery, and he worked with lots of different kinds of volunteers, a group called Veterans Bridge Home, and then invented the podcast here with the help of various researchers and various guests. And so we are really grateful to be back with you once again on Reach Across America.
Yeah, Reach Across America Radio, we love it. So listen, we want to get more into sort of the history of what's happening here, set up the neighborhood like Tom did. Ken Koontz has joined us as a legendary media man here in Charlotte. He's also a graduate of our podcast host location, Johnson C. Smith University, and a long-time stalwart of the community. So it's great to have Ken here to take some questions and have some conversations about the lives of the veterans that we've uncovered at Cedar Grove and what you know about it, Ken.
First of all, let me make it very clear that everybody understands what a legend is. When they say legendary, and as I understand a legend to mean, half that crap ain't true. So you take it for what it's worth and sort out what you think is true and ain't. But as far as the Cedar Grove Cemetery is concerned, it goes back to 2010 with me and a group of guys from what we call the office. Well, actually, it's about 2015. And I brought a little book here that you were instrumental in being sure that the event happened. That about 8 or 9 of us older guys, and when I say older guys, then well above 60 years old, sitting around in our little public man cave at the Bojangles on West Trade that we call the office, and started talking about the Cedar Grove Cemetery, which a couple of us had stumbled across and found it to be quite overgrown. I mean, when I say overgrown, there were full-blown trees, not little saplings, but full-grown trees in that cemetery. There were weeds and all kinds of stuff in that cemetery. And we concluded that we should take it upon ourselves to go in there and clear it out. Well, I said that all of us were well beyond 60 years old. So obviously, we talked a good game, but nothing ever happened until Shea Abdullah and his crew came across that cemetery and subsequently delved into making happen what was only a harebrained thought in the guys in my mind. And actually, this book documents those earlier 2015 days and subsequently goes on to give you a point of reference of the 2024 days when Shea and his crew participated in the Wreaths Across America, which was to lay wreaths on the graves of veterans all over America. And to that point, I said, gee whiz, that's a very noble idea, but it's also awesome that they have gone in and taken upon themselves as a class project, as I understand, from a PhD student at UNCC, and Shea's curiosity about what he was doing over there, and they took it upon themselves to get that place cleaned up. And then some others started getting involved, and the Wreaths Across America representative here got involved. And next thing you know, voila, that place looks like a cemetery now. It's cleared. Grave markers are recognized, veterans in particular, and this book documents the various people who were involved and a part of making that happen. Everybody from Doug Compton, who was a part of the findagrave.org, and of course Shea Abdullah, and another party of that event was, I'll forget his name, Aaron Harper, with the Veterans Bridge Home. And the three of them and the guy from UNCC, it was a remarkable venture, and we documented it. And glad to have been at least a part of that documentation, because that's what I, as a journalist, do. I see a story, I try to tell it. And somebody put a camera in my hand, so now I can illustrate what it is I'm talking about on my terms and get it done.
That's fantastic, Ken. And the book that Ken is referencing is a memorial celebration of our wreath laying ceremony just last year. I will make sure that there's information about access to that online, and you can get yourself a copy. It's a fantastic book. So we're really happy to have Ken here to talk about that a little bit and share his thoughts on what we know about the cemetery. So, Ken, I think that's a really great segue. You as a journalist, I'm interested to know what the veteran experience was like in your coverage days when you're out there telling these stories. There were active things going on, Memorial Days, Veteran Days throughout time. How do you see that, affecting the community around Cedar Grove? Just share a little bit about the veteran experience over there and how it's handled and visible.
My experience at Cedar Grove prior to the terms and time period that I reflected was kind of, you might say, given a new impetus to the issue of veterans. Because my era, I actually volunteered for the Marines in 1968 and was a rising junior at Lamar University, my hometown school, majoring in French and minoring in German. Now, mind you, 1968, Vietnam was in very high gear. And they told me that I was a linguist, obviously, and they would teach me Vietnamese at the finest language school in the world at Monterey, California. And then I would be assigned to Vietnam as an interpreter in the field for our troops there. Well, those of you who know the history of Vietnam, that was not a very appetizing potentiality. So I said, okay, hold that point. And I walked around the corner to the Air Force, and they told me basically the same thing, that I would be on their bases, but still in Vietnam, and neither of which, was a big appetizing thing for me. So bottom line is, as I grew and as we came through that Vietnam experience, I realized that our troops were not duly recognized for the sacrifices made. I believe they said we had more lives lost in Vietnam than we did the entire World War II. So for me, that was a personal note. And to find out that there were so many veterans, well, not so many because we didn't know at the time, but to see that there were veterans buried in the Cedar Grove Cemetery that I happened to have stumbled across, reinvigorated my interest in wanting to do something. And unfortunately, my interest didn't materialize with my effort back in 2015. But subsequently, again, Shay and his crew came together, and what I had recognized years before as a need, they fulfilled that need. And for what was found at Cedar Grove Cemetery is nothing short of miraculous and awesome. And so my hat's off to you guys for what you did and bringing up that whole issue of veterans. There were some dating back to the Second World War and before.
To be honest with you, Ken, one of the really cool affiliations we found with Cedar Grove Cemetery goes back to the Spanish-American War. Mm-hmm. And super fascinating stories there. Tom knows a little bit about that connection between Zachariah Alexander, who again is also an alum here, but he was the secretary of the first Cedar Grove Cemetery Association, which again remarkable. So Tom, Zachariah Alexander, his role here in Charlotte, what did that really mean to that kind of service?
A really important person. He, at this point, I'll give you a little context, very few municipal cemeteries, very few church cemeteries in this part of the South. There's a little bit of both, but often cemeteries are a private organization, sometimes for profit, sometimes nonprofit. And the earliest organizational history we found is from the 19-teens. And the secretary of the organization, helping out Bishop Bruce, who was the AME Zion bishop, very like Ken, I would imagine, and being a bishop.
Oh, no, he was a real bishop.
the affiliation comes
But
through.
anyway, Zachariah Alexander, an amazing person. He was a veteran of the Black Regiment in the Spanish-American War that mustered out of Charlotte and North Carolina. He came home. He had bookkeeping skills. He had management skills, and put together a number of different kinds of projects, including eventually the Alexander Funeral Home. And if you know Charlotte, anytime in the last 50, 60, 70 years, the Alexander Funeral Home figures large. At a certain point in segregation, it was hard to be a business person. It was hard to find customers with money. It's true all across the South that funeral homes and burial societies were a way to bring people together, to build wealth, to build continuity through the community. And so Zach Alexander starts the Alexander Funeral Home. His three sons grow up in that, including Ken will tell more about the sons, but it's still running today, very much intertwined with the civil rights movement. Talk a little Alexander, if you would.
Well, the part that I can really start to talk about was Kelly Alexander Sr., because he was at one point the chairman of the National NAACP board, and had been the primary principal in the Alexander Funeral Home, which still exists today. And I believe it's since 1914 that has been a business. And it is still run and owned by the Alexander family today, and has been a premier partner in a variety of both community, political, religious, and educational ventures as it comes to Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. The late Kelly Alexander Jr., who was also a state representative and died here just about a year ago, and it's now fallen to his brother Alfred Alexander as the principal of that continuing organization and business. And they have always been in the forefront of progressive efforts, including Kelly's brother, Fred Alexander, who was the first black appointed to Charlotte City Council in modern-day history. And prior to that, he had been the res manager for the Double Oaks apartment complex, which is now where the Michael Jordan Novant Health Center now stands. And everybody, from every black socioeconomic strata had lived at some point in time in Double Oaks. So the Alexander name is a very important and recognizable name in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. Of course, though, if you came to Charlotte after 1990, you probably don't know that. But now you do.
Which is a lot of people showed up here after 1990. The only reason I benefit from that knowledge is really just following your lead, Ken. I was really excited to see that someone had recognized that in the past, and the opportunity to step in and help out was, inspired by efforts before. So we always love to recognize that as we stand on the shoulders of our veterans that are buried in Cedar Grove. A couple anecdotal things I'd love to share here. Number one, the last owner of the property was John Davidson, John Sheed Davidson, and he was a part of an organization called the Davidson Brothers Funeral Home. Mm-hmm. I'm reading from one of their early advertisements when they first came out with Cedar Grove, but in particular, they emphasize that we are hoping to give space for a national cemetery for our veterans who served our country. Complete funeral arrangements may be made through the Davidson Brothers Funeral Home. There will be no trouble in securing burial ground by doing so. For all of this will be taken care of if you will only contact the Davidson Brothers Funeral Home.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Wonderful.
Now, another two anecdotal things that are pretty fun about cemeteries is Fred Alexander, who Ken just mentioned, was responsible for desegregating, I think, one of the largest cemeteries. Municipal cemetery, Pinewood Cemetery here in uptown Charlotte. So he was responsible for making the fight to desegregate that place. And there's some fantastic pictures of Fred Alexander, descendant of Zachariah, standing alongside the fence that was removed to integrate The cemetery.
But see, now you're dating yourself.
Yeah.
You're dating yourself.
It's okay. Yeah. I remember.
Oh, because at that time, it wasn't downtown Charlotte.
Oh, there you go.
It was on the fringe of uptown Charlotte, which is right behind what's now Johnson C. Smith University, and that street that runs down behind there. And, of course, back in the 70s when they were planning and starting to develop I-77, it cut off Pinewood and Evergreen.
So that the separation or the integration of that happened before or after 77?
It was before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was before.
Yeah, news to me.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. And then my final anecdotal thing about the Alexanders is the majority of the bodies that rest in Cedar Grove were buried by the Alexander Funeral Home. Mm-hmm. I had a fantastic opportunity to meet Kelly Alexander Jr., who at the time was serving as his role was a senator, or was he a
state rep?
State representative. Kelly Alexander Jr. I called him and left him a message, and I got a return phone call. I told him what we were up to. He seemed really excited about it. I said, we can't figure out what's going on, and whatever direction you think you can give us. And he pointed me to the burial records of the Alexander Funeral Home, which is a tremendous resource. It's everyone they buried all over Charlotte. Yeah. And I went through that list to try to narrow down, who exactly was in Cedar Grove. But I mean, the Alexander story, and to be here at JCSU talking about lost soldiers and what's happening over there, and the continued work I hope we get to do over there is just fascinating to me. Really mind blowing.
Yeah, and it's amazing what burial records how many bridges, how many differences it can bridge, because those obituaries can tell you about families and family structures that you would not otherwise have had a clue about. So you're right; those records are extremely important.
It was tremendous to come across those. So they've been helpful in us as we try to sort of organize and learn more. And again, have been really influential in us coming up with 39 soldiers all at Cedar Grove. I'm going to read off throughout the podcast just a couple names of these soldiers so you guys can get familiar with who they are. If you know one of these soldiers that I mentioned, please reach out. At info@savecedargrove.org. We'd love to connect with the families, find out whatever information we can on our veterans that rest there. So we have Richard Adams. He was born in 1888, lived to 1927. Joseph Allen, 1907. He was a quartermaster in the 398th Truck Company. What war was that? Probably World War II. That sounds like, based on those dates. William H. Bradford, 1891 to 1937. He was probably a World War I vet, we would guess with that, right? William Bridges, 1897 to 1956. Albert A. Brown, Frank Lloyd Brown, Willie Brown. We have Haywood Hazel Crowell, Crowell, for those out there. They're looking to get that right. Richard Cunningham was one of our soldiers, 1925 to 1961. He lived. Davidson Samuel, I'm going to back up, Samuel Davidson Jr. He was a specialist for HQ Company 4 Battalion 68 Armor, 43 to 65. What conflict or war period of time was that?
Could have been Korea.
Okay, yeah, that seems to make sense. So that's just a smattering of some of the soldiers that we'll come across and talk about through the course of the program. But Ken, I'd like to go back to you and again sort of ask, in this community, this Beatties Ford area, do you recall the sort of the standing of the soldiers that were a part of this community, or the coming home, or just the affiliation with the military that the community was experiencing?
Or were they like my dad in World War II and they wouldn't talk about it?
Or like my grandpa?
Yeah. Well, I had an uncle who talked quite openly about it.
Okay.
Walter Charles Haley. And he served in Korea. And as a young boy living in 3rd Ward, where the Carolina Panthers practice field is now, right off of Cedar, my grandmother's yard was about the 50-yard line of that practice field. I do remember my Uncle Walter coming from home on his various leaves And as a member of the 82nd Airborne, he came in those beautifully starched and khakis with the creases down the front of the legs and the tam cocked to the side and the 82nd Airborne, insignia on it, and a string of women walking behind. But when he did return from Korea, he became an alcoholic, and he had been a POW and MIA briefly.
Wow.
And he talks about the Papa Son who put him. He was behind enemy lines, and Papa Son put him in his rickshaw and covered him up with hay and pushed him or drove him back through the enemy lines back into friendly territory in Korea during that war.
Wow.
And it was in the wintertime, and he sustained frozen fingers and extremities, his feet in particular. And as a result of that, he still bore some complications from the use of one of his hands because of the damage from that. And I do remember him being ever grateful about that Papa Son, whom he never saw or experienced again after that. And then when he returned home to come back to what he came to, was quite devastating to him, but that's, quote unquote, the way it was. He came back to segregation. He came back to disrespect. And but over time, as he began to get acclimated into home as it was when he found it, like his father, who had been an elder in the United House of Prayer for All People, he became involved. And I credit that denomination of saving his life, because he did, in pursuit of his father's relationship with the church, moved to join his father in Connecticut, Bridgeport, Connecticut, where he became affiliated with the church in a more aggressive way, and then returned back to Charlotte with his family and children, and continued his rise in the church to the extent that he became an elder in the church and was part of the security of the church called the Gray Soldiers. And he was an interesting guy. As a matter of fact, they called him Gunsmoke because he did have military background and skills that he was not afraid to employ.
Boy, wow.
But that was my most direct impact with the veterans. And then when he died, he's buried out at Forest Lawn West, or he's entombed out there at Forest Lawn West. But again, between the House of Prayer and the VA hospitals, they saved his life for an additional 50 years.
Wow. So Forest Lawn West and Cedar Grove have one thing in common.
Yes, Wreaths Across America.
That's right. We're the only two cemeteries in Charlotte that are part of the Wreaths Across America network. Forest Lawn Cemetery is massive.
As a matter of fact, I wonder if he had been one of those graves or those tombs where a wreath may have been laid.
I'm absolutely sure if it's identifiable. They do a great job out there.
Yeah.
Stacy Crespin is the woman who runs that. She's also been really fantastic in helping us out with Cedar Grove and getting us on board with all of that.
Yeah.
So shout out to Stacy. I know you're out there. Thanks for the Wreaths Across America work.
I have another uncle who was also military, and that was Wilton Haley. But he did his tenure, and Wilton was a rather impish young boy, and it carried over into his adult life. So when he got out, he didn't really deal that much about his military background, though he did become a very highly respected biochemist.
Was he here in Charlotte?
He was here in Charlotte and worked for the Sickle Cell Anemia Foundation here in Charlotte. But then, unfortunately, the scourge of drugs overcame him, and he died somewhat tragically as a result.
Well, Tom, jump in here, but we're sort of recurring theme that we're hearing here is managing the environment that they return to a lot of times, and it seems like that might have been a pattern throughout military service.
It's also one of the beautiful things for me in looking at how Cedar Grove is becoming this more celebrated place today, is that this group, Veterans Bridge Home, which your family back in the day didn't have something like that to connect veterans with other veterans, to connect them with services. If you can share the stories, if you can share just the doing of something, it makes for a healthier person, no matter where you're coming from. And so that's a thing. If you're anywhere near Charlotte, get online, look for Veterans Bridge Home, look for the periodic events that happen at Cedar Grove Cemetery. And the way that is threaded in the community is another thing that I'm hearing here. If you come out of Hildebrand Street onto Beatties Ford Road and you look to your left, you'll see the United House of Prayer for All People Mother House for North Carolina, with the trombone praise bands and all of that. If you look to the right, you'll see what was West Charlotte High School. Go down that street just a little bit, and you go past the doctor's office of Emory Rand, who was the first African-American to practice in the hospital here. A little bit further, you're at JCSU. And I'd like to get Ken, because this is Ken's world, to talk about the Beatties Ford Road corridor. And I think today a lot of students are not from Charlotte.
Right.
And so may not know what's out there. Tell people about this place.
The first thing I want to state and correct, and I hope that it goes much further than this, that Beatties Ford Road is not West Charlotte. Beatties Ford Road is Northwest Charlotte.
There you go.
And,
West Charlotte High School is what
the
I was
West
referring
Charlotte
to.
High School was originally where what became later the Northwest
Junior High, Northwest School of the Arts.
And Northwest School of the Arts. And that was the first West Charlotte High School. And then, of course, in 54, 55, when they came up with the new high school, it was the darling of the country, West Charlotte High School.
Yeah.
It had everything, vocations, beauticians, swimming pool, basketball, you name it. Of course, though, we know the agenda was to keep us from going to Myers Park and the Garinger or Hardy.
That's true. That's true.
It worked because the University Park area, Wesley Heights, all of those, kind of grew up around there, and that's where their kids went. The Beatties Ford corridor has a tremendous marketing and PR campaign behind it. And I tell other friends of mine, I said, the old saying goes about the empty wagon gets the oil. And there are other communities around the city of Charlotte that are just as impactful as Beatties Ford Road. And I tell them, West Boulevard, for instance, the Reed Park, that area, Plato Price School, York Road School, and then down south in Pineville, there was the Sterling community. And out in the northeast part of the county was the Gunn community, J.H. Gunn.
Okay.
And then north of, and somewhat northeast of Beatties Ford corridor was Huntersville and the old Torrance Lytle School. But again, when folks think about the black experience in Charlotte, Beatties Ford Road is, they got it going on when it comes to PR marketing and getting the oil, because they are a well-oiled machine, and it's paying off for them. So that's something that others who talk about the black experience in Charlotte must understand and know well, that it didn't begin with, nor did it end with, nor is it now Beatties Ford Road.
That's a great distinction to make, Ken, because that, as true as that is, there's so many great things happening all over Charlotte and so much great history across this town. Getting to hang out with a guy like Dr. Tom Hanchett, I get more and more exposure to those things, and like yourself as well. But you talked about West Boulevard in that neighborhood, and it really reminds me of something I wanted to cover today is really the impact that Camp Green
Yes.
had, on the black military culture that came out of Charlotte and what was happening at that place. What are your recountings of Camp Green? How has it, impacted the community, from your perspective and historically what you know?
Well, historic perspective is that I didn't know crap about Camp Green until you and I, I got to tell you, man, you're awesome. You're truly awesome. And the materials that you shared with me about the legacy of Camp Green and the impact of the black military experience there was simply mind-boggling.
Crazy, right?
And, I'd say 90% of Charlotte, black experience or even white experience for that matter, don't have a clue about it. Cedar Grove, that's great. But in my mind, Cedar Grove, in terms of its overall appeal and impact, can't touch Camp Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's funny, Ken, is that it can. Because I believe through some of our research, we may have found a few soldiers that entered through Camp Green. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But we'll do some more research on that. I don't want to take that out of context. Please do not make any bets on that based on what Shay said there. But thank you for that, Ken. But Camp Green, Remount Road.
Yeah.
You know what that means? I'm
not familiar with.
Camp Green was a World War I military camp. It was here for a couple of years, moved people through from initially other parts of the United States, and then increasingly from this part of the South. And it was at a time when automobiles and trucks were a novelty. And so soldiers were trained with horses. And if you were an officer, you got to ride on the horse. And when your horse was tired, you took it to remount at the stables. And today in Charlotte, go down Interstate 77 and there's a Remount Road exit. And it is because of that World War I military camp.
How about that, Ken?
Remount.
They ride, get to Charlotte, go to Remount Road, get a new horse, and keep on pushing. Right?
Something. I never thought about that.
Who would, right?
Yeah.
Who would? So that's another.
Thunk it?
Yeah. So I was just actually in Camp Green the other day, and what has happened there, and again, that information I share with you and what we learned about that's been really fascinating. I'm looking forward to digging more into, how that really impacted Charlotte in the long term. I think, the fact that they're recognizing it now as a historic community and doing those things over there, but I don't think they've really started to tap into sort of the black soldier experience there and how that's, spread out and influenced the town here.
Yeah, well, the other thing we didn't mention about Camp Green is, subsequently they established a prison camp out there.
Yeah, they did the same at Torrance Lytle, by the way.
Yeah, that sure did.
Yeah. Did you know that, Tom?
No.
Yeah.
Torrance Lytle
shortly
became a
after
prison camp.
Torrance Lytle closed, at some point it was a jail for a period of time.
Wow, did not know that at all.
Yeah. And Torrance Lytle, just for reference to our audience, is one of the early African American high schools that was here in Mecklenburg County. In an area of Huntersville called Pottstown. You recall we did have a wonderful guest on by the name of B.J. Caldwell. That's episode 9, if anyone's interested.
B.J. Caldwell?
Yes, Miss B.J. Caldwell told us about...
WBTV News?
Different one.
Yeah.
This is a female B.J. Caldwell who is a beloved teacher.
Oh, okay. Well, this B.J. Caldwell was a beloved news department secretary.
Okay.
At WBTV News when I started in '69.
Well, now I don't know.
We only have a little bit more time. I want to get Ken to talk about WBTV and to talk about JCSU. Two different things. I just kind of throwing the ball towards you and tell about the JCSU thing.
Okay.
People that listen to this, a lot of them just don't know, even if they're in Charlotte.
Well, first of all, the two, I can't separate them because first came JCSU. My mother had 5 sisters and brothers, and 4 of them came through Johnson C. Smith University. One of her brothers became a professor in English for 27 years and retired from here. My 2 older sisters left West Charlotte High School and came to Johnson C. Smith University. The older of the 2 was outstanding in the first featured twirler that West Charlotte High School had.
Oh, my.
And
wow.
came to Johnson C. Smith when Curly Neal was here, known as Script Neal back then.
Wow.
And Pettis Norman with the
Globetrotters.
Dallas Cowboys. And she became their featured twirler here. So Johnson C. Smith University is ingrained in my DNA. I say my heart is golden and my blood runs blue. I just told the president that last week.
Okay, good. I'm sure she like that.
And WBTV is intertwined because by the time I was in the 9th grade, my family moved to Beaumont, Texas. And I was in high school there. And upon graduation, enrolled in what was then Lamar State College of Technology, a PWI, predominantly white institution. The end of my freshman year was the year that Martin Luther King was murdered, and we had some relative campus unrest. So along comes 1969, and that stigma of the unrest there was still there. And Johnson C. Smith had offered me a scholarship out of high school, which I didn't take because I felt it was better for my parents and less financial strain for me to stay at home, go to Lamar Tech, pay $83 a semester tuition and fees as a full-time non-resident student.
Yeah.
And I met Dr.
Can't get a
Newsom.
sandwich for that these days.
I met Dr. Newsom at our Alpha Phi Alpha convention in Houston in the summer of '69 and expressed a desire to leave Lamar and to enroll and come to Johnson C. Smith. And he informed me later that there was no scholarship, but because of my experience, having been in radio at the station there in Beaumont doing sports and subsequently news and weather, the morning drive, rip and read, and the '69 was the Kerner Commission, CBS News, Bill Friday, I believe his name was, and Columbia University concluded that the newsrooms were the same as the Kerner Commission had concluded. We were two Americas, one black and one white, and that included the newsrooms. And Dr. Newsom, that summer of '69, knew of the efforts of local media to find black employees. And he orchestrated my opportunity to go to WBTV for an interview possibility of an employment, and it worked, and I got the job in WBTV News and became their first black newsroom staffer or reporter, while at the same time attending Johnson C. Smith, where I graduated in May of 1972. So I always give my props to Dr. Lionel Newsom and his son-in-law, Kurt Peters, who was then Director of Public Relations, and kind of a mentor for me. And so those two men, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and WBTV, or I got them, the Omegas, they have brands on their arms. I have WBTV JCSU branded on my heart.
Alrighty.
Fantastic.
Love it. I love the way these stories flow. The same thing that we see when we look at Cedar Grove Cemetery, then we learn about Sac Alexander, and then we learn about the Davidson Funeral Home, and then we learn about the people who integrated government here in the 1960s. And Ken Koontz, who has a connection to the cemetery, has a connection to JCSU. Connection is a little bit weak as far as I'm saying it. So there must be a stronger word than connection. And the WBTV thing, and still, there's this limited edition book that's sitting here on the table that we're looking at, is yet another way of building community here. And thank you for doing that.
Well, Tom, I can let you know right now that I can wait for a firm connection to either one of those cemeteries.
We can too, Ken. Okay. We can too. But listen, the article that you wrote about our Reads Across America event at Cedar Grove, it is available online as well. From what I understand, at the charlottepost.com. You should be able to find, just look up Ken Koontz and he'll...
Koontz.
That's it, Koontz, as Dr. Hanchett shared with us. And, excuse me, the Community News, I believe, was the other...
County News.
The County News is another publication that ran that story as well.
Q City Metro, I believe.
And Q City Metro. So you can also, on safecedargrove.org, I think we have links to some of those stories about, and the article. that Ken put together. So Ken, I think if we've covered everything, we'll go ahead and let you get out of here, but we've enjoyed talking to you about Cedar Grove, the Beatties Ford Road Corridor, JCSU, WBTV, and so much more. So we really appreciate your time, and let us know if there's anything else we need to add before we get out of here.
Well, I'd just like to add one thing. And for those of you out there who can identify with it, I won't be able to hear you, but you will know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to just shout it out loud and proud. And my guy to the right here, our engineer, if you'd like to chirp in after I start it, please do so. JCSU! All right.
Yeah, there you go. A big thanks to Mr. Joshua Nypaver, our engineer today here from JCSU. Big thank you to the Golden Bulls of Johnson C. Smith for having us here. Dr. Cheryl Butler Brayboy in the media department, Dr. Valerie Kinlock, and as always, Dr. Tom Hanchett. Lovely to be with you, my good friend. And I'm looking forward to the next time we can all get together.
Thank you, Shea Abdullah.
All right. Have a wonderful day, you guys, and we will talk to you soon.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Lost Soldiers, a production of Wreaths Across America Radio, brought to you by SaveCedarGrove.org and HistorySouth.org.